and welcome everybody to our counselor coffee session as we continue forward. This is our City Schools Roundtable, as we're going to be talking about the college experience as your son might experience it in cities of different sizes and what city campuses might look like in different places and how that college experience might feel as you're attending school within a city. So I'm very excited this morning. We're joined by three good friends of CM. We've got Jason Cloutier, who's, I'm sorry, did I pronounce that wrong out of the gate? Cloutier, who's our regional recruitment director from New England. He comes to us from Xavier. Xavier has built a very strong relationship with DePaul over the last few years, where some of our students have found great early success there. We also have Phoebe Perlin from the University of Tampa. Phoebe is a Rhode Island native, so she knows the area well. And Tampa is one of these schools that keeps on popping up on students' lists as a place that they're looking at. And we also have Jesse Heinrich, who is coming to us from DePaul University, which is my alma mater. Just put that out there for that sake. It is also, it's the largest Catholic university in America. It's in Chicago. So we have a very good sampling of different size cities, different size schools, different types of programs as we get going. And as we're sort of in those first couple minutes of the Zoom, as we're waiting for, if there's any late arrivers, I do like to do some icebreakers. And so maybe we'll just go around real quick with this one, which is my favorite question. In our office, we have stopped using the word unprecedented to describe fall of 2020. Phoebe, if you could choose another word that you are tired of hearing of and don't want to hear again in the year of 2020, what would you choose instead?
Definitely, I do not want to hear the word pivot anymore. That has also been a bit overused in my office and in Tampa. And was the question also to choose another word that I would want to hear?
Well, that's the word you don't want to hear anymore. How would you describe fall of 2020 if you can't say unprecedented?
Okay, so if I can't say unprecedented, let's just say it's a growth spurt. I am trying to think of a positive word that we can use here. We are going to learn and grow from this. So that's the word that I'll use.
I love it. I love it. Jesse, what about you? If you can no longer use the word unprecedented, how would you describe the fall and what word are you tired of hearing?
Okay, I'm going to cheat a little bit and not use just a single word, but I am tired of these "we're all in this together" commercials. Like, I love the sentiment, we are all in this together, but I don't know how buying a Subaru is gonna help me with that. The word I would use instead is just weird. It's just weird.
Wild and wacky times. Jason?
Well, aside from not using unprecedented or the new norm as it is, I would say the adaptability of humans in general. I think it's really pertinent that whatever curveballs we get thrown, it's not to use a technical baseball term from last night's Tampa Bay Rays loss, but it's it's just, I think that we have the ability to overcome most of the challenges that seem to be thrown our way. So
I like the positivity. We're starting off strong. It's a coffee, so we're all well caffeinated. We're thinking good thoughts. We're hitting the ground running here. So Jesse, why don't we start with you here as we're thinking about the college search in this time, and as we're thinking about visiting different campuses, one of the real pulls about visiting a city or thinking about a city school is thinking about just like joining that city and its community. And as that travel becomes a little bit more difficult for families, maybe you could just share, like, Jesse, what do you love about Chicago that might not be, on a Wikipedia page?
Love this question. So one of my favorite things about Chicago, actually, I had a parent in a meeting the other day explain this really well. She was actually from the Boston area. And she said to me, when I visited a lot of cities, domestic cities, it's kind of like an American city is an American city is an American city. She was like, Chicago really has like this unique flavor that sets it apart. It's not just like any other city that you can visit. And I think that's really true. I think part of it is that we're super neighborhood centric. So you could live in Chicago for 10 years and never see everything that it has to offer or be out of new things to try. I'm also biased when I'm talking about DePaul and DePaul's campus, because I live in Lincoln Park, I think it's just a really awesome neighborhood. Like I said, one of those neighborhoods with a really unique character that students can feel a sense of ownership of. They don't feel like they're lost in this huge city that they can't make a name for themselves in. They feel like they can establish themselves in a place like Lincoln Park, but still be in the heart of the city. And then just as first-time visitors to the city, I think when you walk out to the lakefront, Lake Michigan, I'm an East Coaster myself too, grew up in Maryland. I think one of the things I miss most is the ocean. And the nice thing about Chicago is you still can walk out to Lake Michigan. It doesn't beat salt water, but it is really awe-inspiring to look out at the lake and see the city skyline right behind you. That's one of my favorite things to do. One of my favorite ways to kind of escape the busyness when I need to. And is there another part of this question that I'm not answering?
No, I think that's great. Thanks. And Jason, maybe I'll turn to you right now. I won't say pivot, but as we're thinking about Cincinnati, my go-to when I talk about that city is Skyline Chili, but what else do you love about Cincinnati?
Well, oddly enough, similarly to Jesse's description and your alma mater, I worked in Chicago for 4 years, and I love Chicago. And yes, I'm plugging Chicago right now because it's my favorite city in America, hands down. Working at Loyola in Chicago for 4 years, my dean and my vice president both left and resurfaced together at Xavier and gave me a call one day and said, "Hey, how'd you like to come down to Cincinnati and work with us?" And I had absolutely no desire to do so. I said, why would I want to leave the best city in America? I just have no reason to leave. So once I had a chance to visit Cincinnati, there was a lot of similarities with Chicago, but we're in the Norwood section of Cincinnati, so it's technically in the Midwest, yet we border Covington and Newport, Kentucky. So the only thing that separates Kentucky from Cincinnati is this 300-yard wide Ohio River, right? So I've described it to a lot of the East Coast families that I work with, saying that it has Midwestern hospitality, yet it has a little bit of Southern charm, but we're still in the Eastern time zone. So we're not quite as far away as everyone seems to think we are. So I think it appeals to a variety of different tastes, of different interests, and a variety of different walks of life for people. So, it kind of has a little niche for everyone, which is kind of unique. But I think unless I told you that the greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, Southeastern Indiana had almost 2 million people, there's no way you would ever grasp that. I mean, Chicago seems vastly larger. Even Boston, for that matter, seems larger than Cincinnati, and it's anything but. It's just, I think traffic patterns are very simple. I get a kick out of when I'm there, hearing the traffic pattern saying it takes 12 minutes to get across the city. I can't even make it over the Tobin Bridge in 12 minutes. So it's just different, and it's warming. It cost of living is significantly less. So I think the investment dollars that our families are working with certainly will utilize and work a little harder for themselves.
Awesome. Phoebe, other than the sports teams, what do you love about Tampa these days?
Well, I'll be quite honest. It's awesome that we have such awesome sports teams in the area, but I'm not much of a sports fanatic myself. So I have a lot of other favorite things about Tampa Bay. First and foremost, of course, the weather. It is about 82 degrees here today. So getting to be the best time of year in Tampa, but more specifically and more seriously, what I love about Tampa is that it's really an innovative city, and there's a lot of startup energy, a lot of young professionals, and it's a really great place to start your career. There's been a lot of investment over the past few years. Bill Gates has actually been working with the owner of the Tampa Bay Lightning to invest in our Channelside district, which is right on the water, really nice area next to downtown. So it's just a really cool place to go to school and then to begin your career. And because of the weather, obviously, we are able to be outside all year round. And I think that really just goes, there's just a sense of, happiness, and people are happy to be here, and they're friendly, and coming from up north, I think there is definitely a different sense of Southern hospitality as well. You go to the grocery store and somebody starts talking to you in the aisle, and you're like, why are you talking to me? Up in Rhode Island, no one would look at me in the grocery store, but that's just kind of how it is in Tampa. And I think it's really underrated part of Florida, and it goes against a lot of the misconceptions that I had about the state of Florida as a whole. I think Tampa Bay is kind of a hidden gem. So that's it.
That's awesome. And I think also as we think about cities from just in general, American cities over the past 6 months from March on, we've seen a lot of people like leaving cities where I think there's actually a good deal, you know, as we think about COVID responses and how different people are responding to this, or different campuses, there might be an idea about what a city campus might look like compared to, you know, that bubble that might exist in a liberal arts school that's in the middle of a Pennsylvania field, right? Jason, could you talk a little bit, like, maybe we can go around the horn here, just how have your schools responded to the crisis? What has the fall been like for you so far in terms of classes, and you know, how are things going COVID related?
Well, I think like many other institutions around the country, we started our fall term 1 week earlier than we had originally planned. And I think the thought process here was when Thanksgiving break rolls around, all of our students will then return home. The following week, they'll have their finals virtually online, and then that'll be the end of the term. And so far, knock on wood, we're still on schedule for that, which is really an advantage. You know, I think with Cincinnati and with Xavier in general, I think that the COVID-19 positivity rates were significantly lower throughout the summer than they were in other hotspots around the country. We weren't considered to be a hotspot area, which is kind of nice. I think that our students, our faculty, our staff they've done a pretty terrific job and respectable job of adhering to CDC guidelines, the new regulations. Our school made all the students, returners included, sign the student code of conduct, which was kind of redrafted this summer. And so they all had to buy into what it is that Father Graham and the board of directors had set forth in front of them, saying that there will not be social gatherings this fall. There will not be any parties. There won't be any of this kind of stuff. And I think for some students, they really, this was an eye-opening experience about the severity of what we're dealing with. And you know, our president, Father Mike Graham, was very verbal and he's very visible in front of the camera, really pointing at the incoming freshmen and the students that are returning, saying, don't be that kid that goes to an off-campus party that brings back this dreadful and deadly disease and ultimately ends up closing up shop for the entire semester. Don't be that kid, you know. And then he really played to their sensibilities, saying, our seniors never got a chance to graduate. They were here with us for 3 3/4 years, and then they never got to see a graduation ceremony because of this. Don't be that kid. So, I mean, he's laying it on thick, and I got to give him credit because it's worked. Okay. But the great thing is that, you know, I think we went back a week early. We're still in person right now. The bulk of our classes are in a hybrid model. There's probably 10% that are fully online and another 10% that are going to be fully in person. But for the most part, I mean, I think because we were as transparent as we were with the parents of the returning students and the incoming freshmen about what our plans were, we kept weekly updates of what we were doing. We over-enrolled this class, and I can tell you right now, I have not heard of another single university, and I'm not saying the other panelists notwithstanding, but I haven't heard of another single university that over-enrolled this year's class. We over-enrolled by a huge margin. And a lot of that stems from the fact that I think that we were fully transparent in what our intentions were and how we were going to go about doing things. So.
Right. Phoebe, how about, you know, Florida keeps on making the news. Why is Tampa actually a pretty safe spot?
Well, I mean, Florida always makes the news, let's face it. Florida's an interesting state. But Tampa Bay, like I said, really is a hidden gem. And I think that our local government has done a really good job here in Hillsborough County at maintaining different precautions and restrictions that are necessary to keep everyone safe. So the mask mandate is still, a thing in Hillsborough County, even though in the state of Florida, maybe not. But I think also, in a similar sense, because UT is a private university, we also have been able to do a good job of kind of creating our own rules to keep our students, our staff, and our faculty as safe as possible. So we have been able to resume in-person instruction due to our small class sizes. We can social distance within the classroom. We do have some hybrid classes that are going on. We've invested in a lot of new technology to ensure that although students are spreading out, they can still participate, see, and hear what's being taught. And I think, again, it also does, fall on the students to an extent, and our students have been doing a good job at being responsible, self-monitoring. We have temperature check stations all over campus, and we do have, a quarantine residence hall just in case. There have been some positive cases, but no hospitalizations or anything like that. So We're still in person, wearing masks everywhere. You know, I'm in my office right now and I have my own office, so I don't have to wear my mask in here, but everywhere else on campus, everyone's wearing masks, even outside. So I think it's been a good effort on everyone's part to just, again, like Jason said, stay transparent and understand that this is still a severe situation, even though maybe the rest of the state of Florida does not fully understand that or is just over it. But I think, you know, we are also lucky in the fact that we are in the warm weather and we can utilize outdoor spaces all year long. So we have a lot of tents set up around campus so that we can still do, you know, student activity fairs just spread out over the entire campus as opposed to on our quad and things like that. And obviously, we've employed a pretty professional contact tracing team as well to help us with this process.
Perfect. And then Jesse, DePaul has the unique problem of you have two campuses that, you know, you have a lot of students going back and forth. How have you been able to kind of preserve the bubble, as people keep on referring to it, and how has the fall been so far?
Yeah, so that context is super important. We have two main campuses. So when students are applying to DePaul, they're not applying to one campus or the other. And students oftentimes are taking classes on both campuses. They're just 4 train stops, about a 10-15 minute train ride apart. So one is in the Loop, the main business district, tourist district of the city, and then the other in the Lincoln Park neighborhood that I was mentioning a little bit earlier. So for that reason, among a few others, we are 99% virtual this fall. So I am kind of the outlier in this group, I suppose. We normally have about 3,000 students living on campus. This year, we have about 250 on campus this fall. So students had to meet a certain exception, had to demonstrate a need for on-campus housing in order to be one of those few students. And those exceptions were things like food and housing insecurity, our international students, NCAA athletes who had an on-campus practice requirement. So a very small number of students actually moved onto campus. And we did hold out hope for as long as possible that we were going to be fully in person, but with the combination of our students going back and forth between the two campuses, spending a lot of time in other parts of the city using public transportation, you can see the train behind me, it was going to be really difficult to have students return to campus in a safe way. And Chicago has really handled the pandemic really well in a lot of ways. And the city's actually not a hot spot by national standards. I mean, it's all relative, but it's been going pretty well throughout the summer. So this decision is a quarterly decision. So this is the situation for the fall quarter. The winter quarter, starting just after January, could look a little bit different. The plan right now is to expand on-campus classes and housing a bit for winter, and then hopefully expand further for the spring. The good news was that we didn't have to adjust our academic calendar at all because we already operate on these 3 10-week terms rather than the 2 15-week semesters. So if we had welcomed students onto campus this fall, our fall quarter always ends before Thanksgiving anyway. And same with the winter quarter. We can reevaluate in March, and it will be the start of a new term. It won't be mid-semester. So we'll see what these next few months have in store. But for the most part, we are virtual. It's funny though, because I know that students returned because, as I said, I live in Lincoln Park, and come late August, when I was on my walks and runs outside, I saw a lot more people, a lot more student-aged people. So they are still in the neighborhood. They are still involved in their student activities and their internship opportunities in a socially distanced way. But as far as the on-campus courses and housing, it's pretty limited right now.
Okay. You know, and so Phoebe, maybe we'll start this next question with you. I think that's some good information overall about everyone and sort of where we are right now. And then there's also, like, in general, there's sometimes a little bit of a tension for a school of, like, are you in a city or are you of a city? And I guess, like, that can be a very big 2-letter word that's in the middle there. And as each of you think about your city campus, how do you kind of define that breakdown, and how would you describe your institution's relationship to its hometown?
Sure. So great question. And this is one of my favorite things about UT. And I am an alum of UT, and this is something that really drew me to UT as a student. And it's really, we are in the city and of the city, because we are literally a 5-minute walk from downtown Tampa, but we have a completely private, closed campus. So we have a very natural barrier between our campus and the city, and that is a river. So the Hillsborough River our campus from downtown Tampa. We are the only university that's located so closely to downtown. So we pretty much are downtown, but we don't have any city streets running through our campus, only cobblestone roads. So you still get that beautiful private campus feel, but within a 5-minute walk, you are downtown. So in terms of entertainment, internship, and job opportunities, you still have a world at your fingertips. And I think that's pretty unique in terms of that balance.
Dig it. Jesse, how about DePaul? How do you define that sort of split between in the city and of the city?
The relationship between DePaul and Chicago is really inextricable. The city really relies on DePaul, and DePaul really relies on the city. Chicago wouldn't be Chicago without DePaul. As far as campus life goes, I think you get the best of both worlds from having both the Loop and Lincoln Park environments. I mean, in the Loop, you are in such a truly urban campus environment. So all of our DePaul spaces are housed in about 5 skyrise buildings. You can probably see them in the skyline in my virtual background behind me. Corners of Jackson and State Street. So you could not be further from the heart of that Loop district. But you have that very city feel. It doesn't feel like a traditional campus. In Lincoln Park, you do get that other piece, the traditional campus feel, where you have about 1 square mile of DePaul only space. You have those traditional green academic quad spaces with academic buildings, with 11 residence halls, with library, student center, athletic centers. So you are getting both. You're still getting your traditional campus feel in one of the most desirable neighborhoods for students, for young professionals in the city of Chicago. So one of the things that I always say to students is you end up seeing students who attend other universities across the city wanting to live in Lincoln Park. So as far as just campus life and how students feel when they're on campus and in their living spaces, they really couldn't be further from the prime locations that students want to be. And then just as far as opportunities go, I mean, in the Loop, our College of Business is literally a block from all the Big 4 accounting firms. They're coming to campus regularly. Our College of Education students can student teach a couple of blocks away. They have a lot of freedom in that student teaching placement selection process. I use business and education as examples, but I could honestly go on and on and on forever. Students are just in such close proximity to all of the opportunities and all of the resources that the city has to offer.
Love it. Jason, how about at the X, with that definition of in the city or of the city?
Well, knowing my primary market of recruitment is here in the Northeast, I'll use Boston as an example. Cincinnati itself is in terms of square miles about twice the size of Boston, with almost twice as many people in the greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, and Indiana area. However, unlike Boston, from Interstate 495 each, which has almost 40 colleges and universities, there's only about a dozen in this greater tri-state area where we call home. So, when I talk to students and I ask them, why college, a lot of them, their knee-jerk response is to get a good job. Well, okay, hold on, time out. A college degree doesn't owe you a good job. I'm not even sure what a good job is, right? Like, I've been in this job for 20 plus years and this is my profession. But if you're looking to go to a city where there are internship opportunities that are plentiful with very limited competition, then looking at a city such as Cincinnati, which only has a dozen schools and about 75,000 college students, you then become the big fish in a small pond scenario. You've eliminated a lot of the competition. And, much like Jesse was saying that some of these internship providers come and recruit her students, same thing happens here. It's certainly advantageous that we have a campus that's 3.5 miles from downtown, So I would say that we are very similar to a Boston college in Chestnut Hill with relationship to downtown Boston being about 1.5 miles, 2 miles away on a campus that's about 250 to 300 acres. We have a campus that's 200 acres with ample green space, and we only have about 5,000 students. So we're not that similar to a Northeastern or a BU, but we are much more similar to a Boston college in that respect.
Perfect. Those local regional connections are always helpful at saying like, okay, yeah, this is the going city to city. It's impossible not to make comparisons. I think sometimes that is that connection that we feel. Obviously, each of you represent a school that is, farther away from Boston than BC is, though. And whenever we think about like different regional hubs, there's a little bit of, okay, I'm coming from out of state. How well do I then join that campus and join that campus community and kind of assimilate into that city and join that city? And so Jesse, maybe we'll start with you here. How regional is your school? Like, does it matter if a campus that is far, DePaul is far away from Boston? How do people make some of those connections when they get to Chicago?
Great question. So just as far as undergraduate student population, that demographic breakdown, about 60% of the students here at DePaul are from the state of Illinois. About a third are from the greater Chicagoland area, some from the city of Chicago. So that other 40% are students from other parts of the country, other parts of the world. We are seeing more and more students from the Northeast, from the Mid-Atlantic with each passing year. Those numbers almost doubled with this incoming fall 2020 freshman class. So that's really exciting for us to see. So just as far as a regional affinity group, students from the Boston area are going to have that here. There's going to be at least 50 other students from just the Boston metro region coming to DePaul. Which I think is nice that you have some of the comforts of having friends who are from an area that's close to where you grew up, but also having the opportunity to meet people from all over. And the other thing that I will say, just as far as distance being a barrier in the college search process, I can totally understand that. I always say that Southwest Airlines should pay me for how often I plug their fares to families, but Chicago Midway, I'm a big Midway over O'Hare person. Home Alone never would have happened at Midway. But you can definitely have that $100 round trip ticket home multiple times a year. Like I said, I'm from Maryland. I go home at least 5 times a year, and it's always at an affordable price. When you're in kind of these hubs with these great large airports that you can take the train to, get to really quickly, the distance becomes not so much of a barrier. I'm not a DePaul alum. I went to college in South Carolina, and I drove 9 hours back and forth. And I can tell you the flight back and forth from Chicago is preferable in my eyes. So that's all I have for you, that it can be easy to get back and forth, and you still can be surrounded by fellow Northeasterners.
And then I think we might even see a trend as we go through these 3 questions. Jason, as you're thinking about the number of students at Xavier who are, from the Northeast, like how do those students from Massachusetts begin to sort of join the Cincinnati community?
Well, I think also, and similarly to Tampa being in the Eastern time zone, I think mom and dad can kind of get behind that. And I'm sorry, Jesse, in Central time zone, I get it. It's only 1 hour difference, but still, I think there's this barrier that a lot of families tend to subconsciously put up. They'll draw this 350-mile radius around Boston and say, okay, Johnny, this is where you can apply to. And you're not going anywhere beyond that. Let's just be realistic. But as Jesse had already mentioned, Southwest bought a terminal in Cincinnati International Airport. So I'm again pushing, Southwest Airlines as often as I can because they're relatively affordable. And, there are direct flights on Delta and on American out of Logan, which is kind of nice. But I think that the students, once they get into our communication pipeline, a student applies, and once he or she is admitted, they get into this Road to Xavier, platform, which is it's kind of a social network of sorts where they can start meeting other students. They actually will find their roommates there. We don't assign roommates; they find themselves. And knowing that there are so many other students from the greater Boston, Southern New Hampshire, Southern Maine, Vermont, Rhode Island area, and Connecticut's its own beast, to be quite honest with you. I mean, we do really well in Connecticut, but knowing that there's so many students that they have word of mouth, that all the advertising and all the goodwill that I will give is pales in comparison to a student from CM that's there right now, that's having a positive experience and is calling home or texting home or FaceTiming home saying, Mom, Dad, this is the best decision I ever made. Mom and dad then go out and talk to their neighbors whose kids are already looking. And honestly, God, that's kind of how all this organically happens with us. But, if they get the chance to come out and visit, they know somebody. And if they don't, they will know somebody pretty quickly. And we're not a huge school, and conversely to what, DePaul is with 60% in-state, we're 60% out of state. So, and that wasn't always the case. I mean, when I started working here in 2008, it was 65% in-state, 35% out of state, and things have drastically shifted to the point where, we're employing, by Christmas, we're expecting to have 10 regionally based directors around the country that are not housed in the greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky area. So we're almost doubling our staff size, and it's a direct result of what Father Graham and our board of directors sees as, we've had a strong reputation in the Midwest. We need to continue the reputation we have out domestically. So.
And then Phoebe, what's your kind of in-state, out-of-state breakdown? And remember that this morning's Council Coffee is brought to you by Southwest Airlines.
Absolutely. I'm always pushing those Southwest fares. I personally like to fly into TF Green because Southwest does direct to Rhode Island, but JetBlue also does direct from Boston to Tampa. And we have about 40% of our students from the state of Florida. About 10% of our student body are international, and then the other 50% come from all 50 states. So I met other Rhode Islanders, I met people from Massachusetts. We do get a lot of New England and Northeastern students. I don't know, something about the palm trees just seems to have, the word of mouth marketing has done us well in on the East Coast, but we do get students from California, from Arkansas, from Alaska, from Hawaii, and I really did meet friends from all over, including I met friends from Rhode Island that I had never met before attending UT, which is really funny to me considering how small Rhode Island is. But you definitely will meet a lot of people from your area, and you also will meet people who have completely dissimilar backgrounds and perspectives than your own. And I think that's one of the best things about UT is that diversity. And I think what really is important to note is that we look for students who not only are, of course, an academic fit for UT, but who are a good fit outside of the classroom and who will be able to travel a few thousand miles away from home and take advantage of everything that we have to offer and to learn and live alongside people who are different than them. So that, is what really constitutes a good fit. And that's who we see as a successful student at UT. So we've done some studies about our retention rate from freshman to sophomore year, and we have about a 78% retention rate from freshman to sophomore year. And the reason that, we're really trying to focus on that good fit is because the number one reason that students transfer after that first year is homesickness. So I'm not gonna, say that UT is for everyone, that everyone from Massachusetts is going to travel to UT and flourish here. But I think that, we're putting in a really distinct effort to find those open-minded, independent students. And we do have events like Family Weekend every year. We have pretty long 5-week breaks. Or for the winter break, it's about a 5.5-week break, and students go home for Thanksgiving. Usually this year we're ending the semester early a bit, but so you do get a decent amount of time to spend with your family. And of course, it's never really hard to convince the families in the Northeast to come down and visit their students in about January or February. One of my favorite activities every year is to hit the beach in January or February and send my family photos. And shortly after, they are booking a trip down to Tampa. So, and because Tampa is a really small city, just to answer kind of the other side of this question, it is pretty easy to acclimate, and it doesn't feel like, the city is going to eat you alive. It is a pretty homey place. And I think I was able to acclimate very successfully, and I am definitely a Tampa transplant, as I call myself now. So.
Awesome. And Phoebe, you raised a really interesting point about hey, let's be intentional about how we retain our students and pull them in. And I think one way that schools do that is often kind of an orientation program or extended first year experience that is saying, hey, listen, you're in a city and we want you to use this city, that this is going to be, you're coming here in part because of the city that we're located in. And so it made, Jason, I don't know if you would mind starting with this one, like what does Xavier do as that first year experience or some of those orientation experiences that really say, and I know that you talked like the network starts forming from the students organically, but then there's also like the institutional build to sort of make sure that happens.
So inherent to Xavier, we have a student success model and a student success program, which at first, when it was introduced in fall of 2017, I thought it was a little cumbersome, a little too big brother-ish, a little too, we're not relinquishing the reins of actually producing young adults, right? But the longer this particular program has progressed, we have seen a huge upshift, and as Phoebe was just talking about, a freshman retention rate. And this class that will be graduating in May will be the first class that's gone through 4 years of the student success model. So I think that, the student success model indicates that every incoming freshman is going to be issued a student success coach, a financial coach, an academic coach, and a career coach, not to mention their resident advisor, right? So you've got essentially 5 people, 5 different individuals whose jobs it is, as Phoebe's already alluded to overcome homesickness, to overcome academic stresses. Jesuit education in general, historically, is known to be pretty rigorous in and of itself, and all 27 Jesuit schools tend to pride themselves on that. But also to overcome, social barriers, and especially with COVID-19 being in place, how do you strike up a relationship with somebody that you can't get close enough to shake their hand, right? You're masking up and not seeing facial expressions. It's difficult. So we've had to kind of reorganize and rework how this student success model plays out. But by and large, I think this student success model that we have in place has really allowed the parents to kind of breathe, to kind of know that, okay, my son or my daughter is in great shape if they attend Xavier because of all of the support systems that we have in place. Our jobs are not to replace mom and dad. Let's just be clear about that. Our jobs are to help produce young adults. If your son or daughter right now is the same person they're going to be in 5 years, I will assure you that we failed them. In some capacity, they shouldn't be the same person. They should be a much better, more reinvented, more responsible, more socially discerning type of an individual. So I think that we've just, it really has worked, and it's started to gain some national, credibility as to how we care for our students, not only academically, but for all the other pillars of roadblocks that they're likely to face.
And I think that's such a great model in terms of like, hey, we're going to put multiple supports around a student if they arrive to campus. Phoebe, what have you been doing at Tampa, either orientation wise or first year program wise or.
Sure. So our orientation occurs on campus. There is a hybrid model that we've introduced. So you do the boring stuff online, learning about policies and procedures and things like that. And then we have an entire week of welcome on campus that has to do with just getting acclimated, learning about other resources on campus, going to student organization fairs. There are student government lunches and things like that. And of course, we had to reinvent a lot of those activities this year and do different Zoom activities for orientation. There was like a virtual Zoom paint party, things like that. But entire week long orientation program. And then the entire first year, you will be enrolled in a BAC 101 course, which is our first year experience course. That's part of our core curriculum. So you get to kind of choose which type of course you're interested in. So you're with students who have similar interests as you. And then that course focuses on, that concept, but also helping to do team building activities and to, again, just to acclimate, make new friends, and forge new relationships. And that lasts the entire first year. And that's been around since I was a student, and it's seen a lot of success. But other than that, there are always different activities and different resources that are being promoted to students regularly so that they know that they can seek help however they need it. And the more that a student gets involved, the better that, they acclimate to campus.
Great. And Jesse, I know that this year is kind of a aberrational year, like we talked about earlier for DePaul, but in a normal year, what does that orientation or first year experience look like as students begin forming those connections with both campus and the city of Chicago?
Yeah, so I will start by saying that although the experience this year has been modified for the virtual setting, our first year programming, I can't say enough good things about their office. The program is super robust. They do an amazing job of just showing students that they can feel comfortable calling DePaul home, calling Chicago home. And just on a personal level, even aside from DePaul specifically, I mean, all of the programs that all of us are talking about today, I think these are so important. I think sometimes your knee-jerk reaction is to roll your eyes at like, oh, there's like this University 101 type class. Like, this is not an academic course. Why am I paying for this? I think that in my own experience in college, my alma mater had a similar type of program, and I can trace like so much of my school spirit, pretty much my entire college friend group that I'm still in touch with, to that like introductory first year welcome to the university type class. So just so important for that community building experience. Here at DePaul, one of the most important features of our first year program, I could talk about the entire program forever, but I'll focus in on Chicago Quarter, which is a class that all first year freshmen are required to take their fall quarter. They are inside of the classroom for part of that class. The class is led by a faculty member, a staff member such as myself, and then an upper class mentor, so a junior or senior here at DePaul. The class sizes are really small. Our class sizes are really small in general, but that Chicago Quarter class is usually around 10, 15 students. So that common meeting time on campus is just a great time to talk through campus resources, campus traditions, tools for academic success. Let's just talk about how you're doing. Like, how are you acclimating? How are you feeling? But then the other half of that class, students are becoming familiar with navigating their way around Chicago. So they are going on excursions across the city as a class. The excursions are determined by the course section that they register for. So some really popular options are theater in Chicago, jazz in Chicago, Chicago architecture. Probably the most popular is the Chicago Cubs course. Students will spend several nights in September during that first month of school going to Cubs games at Wrigley Field. That's a point of contention in our office because we're split pretty 50-50, Cubs, White Sox. And I always say, I'll just go to wherever I get a free ticket because I'm a Baltimore Orioles fan, which has been a painful experience for my entire life. So I digress, but it's a great way for students to get to know the city in kind of a guided setting. You're taking public transportation as a group to these trips all over so that you feel comfortable navigating in that way. So it's a great way to get to know fellow first year students, start to feel comfortable both on and off campus.
I love it. I don't think the Cubs class was there when I was at DePaul. I believe I had to take something about redlining or real estate. Like I was definitely not going to Cubs games. So that's that's a good evolution there. And I think where we start, maybe this is one of the big questions or big things people think about with this city campus. And I think we're doing a great job so far talking about, the transition and that first year experience. A lot of students and families are drawn to city schools because of that allure of internships or work right after college, like that job placement where you kind of find that fit and then that fit extends even beyond graduation. So Phoebe, maybe we can start with you in terms of when people, and I guess this is kind of like that Mr. Wizard, how does it all work part of the conversation, right? Like people hear city school, they think internships. How do you do that at Tampa? Like, how do you leverage your school's relationship to the city to set students up for success during school and after graduation?
Sure. So there are a few different ways that we do that. And first and foremost, I will say, I think someone mentioned this earlier, maybe it was Jesse, that like we are, pretty integral to the city of Tampa, and the businesses and organizations in the area really want UT students to intern and work for them. So that's, just first and foremost, an amazing feat. But we have an extremely robust career services center on campus that is constantly posting to thousands of internship and job opportunities in the area and around the country as well. And they also have recruiter fairs on campus throughout the year where they do bring recruiters to meet and network with students. They'll do events to help students get prepared to seek out internships, whether it is a resume building workshop or mock interviews or a professional etiquette dinner. They want to make sure that, you know, the students are prepared and confident to enter into the professional world as well. But the other side of that is our faculty are so well connected. Some of them are, you know, adjunct faculty, so they are full-time in their field, and they come with a wealth of knowledge and experiences and connections. And I actually utilize my faculty members more so to actually get the internships that I had during my time at UT. And I had 3 of those that I received academic credit for when I was a student here. And it was really easy for me to come by. And I got to diversify the different internship opportunities that I had to experience a little bit of everything. And career services is still available and the faculty are still available to you once you graduate. You know, so the faculty really get to know the students. I actually got my first job after graduating from UT because of one of my faculty members. And if I wanted to, you know, go on the career services job website, then I could utilize that. I could utilize them as a resource for as long as I live. So that's pretty great.
Awesome. Jesse, how about at DePaul? How does Chicago, and you know, you mentioned the Loop campus before, how do you sort of leverage that city relationship?
Yeah, so it's like Phoebe was saying, it's all about leveraging those connections for students, whether that liaison is a faculty member with a great professional network, or that's a career center, or the internship placement coordinators within the respective academic colleges. Those are all great resources for students. Our career center is really phenomenal. Internship fairs, job fairs, resume workshops, mock job interviews. We also have a really awesome, you know, it's 2020. We're all about the social networks. We have an online platform called Ask, Alumni Sharing Knowledge. It's a really comprehensive alumni database that students can utilize to connect with those alumni, to find internship and job opportunities. I refer to it as DePaul's kind of mini version of LinkedIn. That's a really nice way for students to connect. I also think a really important part of securing internships for students is removing the barriers that exist in completing an internship as an undergraduate student. I think 2 of those barriers are unpaid internships. A lot of places try to get by without paying students for their work. And then also just completing that internship in addition to all of your coursework. So 2 of the ways that we directly counteract those barriers is providing scholarships for students who are completing an unpaid internship. So they are being paid in some way by virtue of a scholarship from DePaul. And then also awarding course credit for those internship experiences. So they're not completing the internship in addition to completing their coursework. They're kind of one and the same. So all of those career services on campus, removing those barriers. And then, of course, as we kind of led off the question, just being in close proximity to all of those employment opportunities by virtue of being in such a large city too.
Right. Jason, how about at Xavier? How do you guys manage that relationship?
Well, I think there's a couple of important, I guess, topical points I should discuss. One being the fact that we are a Jesuit Catholic school, right? So with the 27 Jesuit schools around the country, every single one of those 27 Jesuit schools are either in or immediately next to an urban environment, and that's by design, right? So you understand that, you know, when it comes to community service, philanthropic work, which is very important to a lot of your students, right, as well as it is to our students, it's an expectation that they're going to want to give back. They get to any of the 27 Jesuit schools and they know the world doesn't revolve around themselves, right? So men and women for others, incur personalis is essentially the motto and the creed of what the Jesuit schools do. So those cities really depend upon what we do for them in terms of volunteer community service hours. Now, switching gears, talking about the internships and the co-ops, and I think that a lot of students may not even understand the difference between an internship and a co-op because we use those terms so synonymously with one another that we just think they naturally know. And I'm glad that Jesse talked a little bit about, paid internships, which is something that is the win-win. You're getting the credits towards your degree, you're getting paid for your experience and for your time that you're dedicating there. The advantage of Cincinnati is that, they come and recruit our students. We don't have to go, beating down a door saying, hey, listen, my name's Jack. I'm hoping to intern with you guys. I'll even grab coffee for you every single Friday, whatever you need. I'm your guy. They just come to us. It's set up. Okay. But once they graduate and once they've had some practical hands-on training, they have access not only to our career services long after they've graduated, but they also have access to the job board at the other 26 Jesuit institutions. It's this job share that we have amongst each other. So, a student wants to come back here to the Boston area, they have access to Holy Cross and Boston College's job share board. So it's an advantage because we're not just limiting them to remaining in the greater Cincinnati area unless they want to. But much to the chagrin of many moms and dads, Phoebe stayed in Tampa. A lot of our kids stay here. They find themselves that a job. I mean, I forget which review it was. Princeton Review. One of them had rated us the #1 college city in America for recent graduates because of the plentiful amount of jobs, the low cost of living, startup, capital companies. And we have more Fortune 500 companies per capita than anywhere else in America. For a size our city, that's pretty robust. So.
Perfect. I love it. And I think we hit a lot of the big notes here, and we're kind of brushing up against 9 o'clock. I definitely want to leave a little bit of time for parent Q&A. If there's something that we didn't cover, and maybe we could just go with like a quick response, but if there's something you're interested in, if you're a parent of a senior and you have a question about SAT, ACT, or if you have a question about anything, by all means, like lay it on us and we'll try to answer as fast as we can. Keep the trains running on time. And you can use the chat or raise your hand.
Jack, what are the chances someone turns on their camera? We can actually see them.
I don't know, 50-50, it's early. Like, I'm hoping. Anyone?
We're good.
We just covered it all. Do we want to go just like rapid fire, 30 seconds or less? What are each of you doing SAT, ACT, test optional in, the fall of SAT, ACT? Jason, you want to start?
Sure. I'll tell you that we were test optional prior to COVID-19. We're still test optional today. The biggest difference being that we are fully test optional for all academic programs, all competitive scholarships, and the 5 honors programs as well. I would also like to just say that the last piece and last tidbit of advice that I would discern to you would be, the 3 of us on this panel, we're admission counselors. Our jobs are to try to admit your sons and your daughters to our institutions. I don't think it's lost on any of us when a student chooses to voluntarily apply to college, let alone our institutions. So just know that we're your ally. We're in your corner. We're trying to admit, we're trying not to deny. We don't get our kicks out of sending out rejection letters, trust me. So.
Awesome, Phoebe.
Sure. So UT has always required test scores in the past, but this year, of course, due to the circumstances, we have gone test optional. And what that means at UT is truly test blind. So there is no advantage to sending test scores. We will not be looking at them for evaluation purposes, for merit scholarship purposes, anything at all. Now, will that continue next year is the question. Not sure yet, so I'll keep you posted, but seniors don't need to worry about sending those test scores. We'll solely be looking at, the unweighted GPA and course rigor for that academic side of evaluation. And then of course, we look at everything else that they submit, the essay, the letters of rec, a resume, anything that they want to showcase what they do outside of the classroom.
Perfect. Jesse?
So similar to Xavier, DePaul was test optional before COVID-19. We've been test optional for almost 10 years now. So not a new application review process going on over here. Students can submit test scores if they'd like, but they are receiving the same consideration for those merit-based academic scholarships, whether or not they send us a test score. I always say to students who are trying to decide whether or not to send in a test score, I try not to advise them one way or another, but I just do say that if you don't send in that test score, then the primary way that we assess that academic merit is based on the high school transcript. If you do send in that test score, it's going to be a combination of the transcript and that test score. So yeah, for students who have those really strong high school performance, rigorous courses, all of that good stuff, those are all good information to have when considering applying with or without that test score. But we will remain test optional in the years to come as well.
I love it. Thank you everyone for participating this morning. I think that was some great information about city schools and what that city experience is like for a student, that I hope for our parents that will be helpful, either as you're considering these institutions or other city schools, kind of what things you might want to be looking for. Jason and Phoebe have both already done a virtual rep visit this fall, but they are just amazing partners. And if you have questions following this session, their emails are in the chat. Jesse is visiting virtually next Wednesday. So if you heard some good things about DePaul today and you want your son to come back next week, by all means. But like Jason is local. I think he's always down to meet at a Panera for a cup of coffee if you want to hear something, meet individually. And then, like I said, Phoebe is also a great partner if you have questions about Tampa. So thank you everyone for your participation this morning. That coffee from 8 a.m. is starting to wear off. I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you.